I'm Orestria, a goth girl in Japan, and these are my impressions for the winter 2023 anime season. Alright class, magic school is now in session. Ah yes, fuck TERFs. Just be porn. Yeah, I get it. It sucks that porn gets no budget and shit animation. These shows want to be porn, but know they'll make more money being ecchi. There is no point beyond the erotic. Inu ni nattara suki na hito ni hirowareta. Okay, really? This is less of a case of this should be porn, and more a case of if people could make and enjoy porn without judgment, you wouldn't need this. Our main character is a guy who has become a dog. He's also a bit slow because somehow he fails to notice that he's a dog for a long time despite everyone around him talking about a dog and despite his POV being from the ground up. And I knew going in from the plot synopsis that this would be a dog point of view ecchi. A thing I just had to say. But it was still more than I expected. This girl grabs a stray dog off the street, takes it to the bathroom and cleans it up, and strips naked to wash it. And girl, you just got this dog off the street. You don't know if it has fleas or ringworm or whatever. And the camera bends, desperate to make sure her chest is in frame. And when she gets splashed, she moans. Just be porn. And we start, as always, with the nope category. Shows I think are not worth your time. Ningen fushin no bokensha tachi ga sekai o sukuu you desu. I think this show has an interesting idea. A show about adventurers who have lost faith in humanity. Okay. The whole reason Blue Lock is so fun is because it's what if sports show but no teamwork. So what if adventurers but not goody two-shoes has potential. The presentation, however, is unacceptably bad. Mid-animation and direction, whatever, I can put up with that. But this episode was exposition dump after exposition dump after exposition dump. Exposition about how adventurers go to the labyrinth inside a city that is also inexplicably laid out like a labyrinth. Exposition about our main character's background. He was an adventurer with a girlfriend, he got kicked out of his party, and then his girlfriend broke up with him. Finally, after speeding my way through all of that, he ends up sitting at a table in a bar with a bunch of other adventurers, and implausibly they all literally declare, "I can't trust people!" aloud at the same time. I was like, whatever, okay, I made it through the boring setup, and now the show is going to start. And cue flashback. It immediately cuts to the background of one of the other characters to show why they don't trust people. I am left to assume the rest of the episode was nothing but flashbacks showing all of their backgrounds. I'm not sure because I stopped there. I'm not some amazing editor, but I could trim and reorder the events that I watched in this episode without any additional footage, make it about a third as long and twice as emotionally effective. There's just no creative vision here whatsoever. In conclusion, if your first episode is going to be 90% flashbacks, just fucking start your story somewhere else. Oyu Kyumi no Kaina. This show starts us off with a small group of people living on top of the world. The top of a tree holding up a canopy over the whole world. Their society is crumbling. There used to be lots of different groups of them around, but they think they're the only ones left. And there are increasingly large holes opening up in the canopy itself. What they don't know is there are more people. They're just not on the canopy. They're down below in the frigid snow sea. I liked the world building, and we have finally made it to the point where 3D anime are watchable. The atmospheric shots are actually really wonderful here. It just doesn't look as good on the characters, but it was fine. This show was really, really slow, though. I watched most of it at double speed, and I feel like they had the inciting incident happen at the end of the show, and it really should have happened in the first half, or maybe even just the first scene, because then we would have had an audience point of view character to help us become familiar with the Canopy Society. OK 3D is the best compliment I have for it, and if you can't construct your show enough to have me curious about the second episode, it says a lot about your pacing and plot. I'm really easy. It's really easy to make me want to watch a second episode, honestly. Kaiko sareta ankoku heishi 30 dai no slow na second life. Script writing time rolls around, and I don't remember the show based on the title. I read through my notes, and it is hilarious how my notes escalate, clearly getting angrier and angrier as the episode goes on, concluding with, and I quote, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, how is aura not magic, fuck you, that was the one thing you had in your show." Let's backtrack. Instead of our main character being kicked out of an adventuring party, he's being kicked out of the Demon King's army. Why? Because he doesn't have magic, and we are told explicitly and clearly that the only difference between humans and demons is that demons use magic. Our main character ends up in a human village where he meets our other main characters, a human woman named Malika and her tits. The show doesn't have overall ecchi vibes, but it really does everything to make sure that Malika's breasts are in the frame as much as possible. Our main character is very concerned about being around humans because if they find out a demon, they'll kill him. I mean, they'll only find out he's a demon if he uses magic because that's the only difference, and it's also the thing he literally can't do, but whatever. And then, Malika's dad uses aura, which, fuck you if you can explain to me the difference between aura and magic. And that was the point where my anger boiled over. The fine section is for shows that I think work. If it's got a trope you love, a genre you love, a character you love, these can be a great time. But if it's not your thing, they may not be worth it. Moipon. This is a chill slice-of-life show about some girls in the judo club. There's a lot of heart and care I can feel here. I like that there are some slightly stockier girls, that they're showing the strength and power that girls can have, and that the girls themselves seem relatable and likable. But there's an awful lot of not animation here. Like, not mid-animation, just fully lackluster animation. And it's a really basic story and plot with standard pacing. Gives you a lot of time to really soak in the non-spectacle in front of you. I considered putting this in the nope section, and I decided that was just a bit too harsh. I could definitely see someone relating to these characters and enjoying the show despite its flaws. However, that someone is not me. The Legend of Heroes Sen no Kiseki Northern War. We have monsters and we have guns. I wasn't quite able to put my finger on what kind of era of history we're in. It seems like it's going to be a lot about wars, revolutions, and those kind of inter-country politics. And our main character is a soldier. I'm sorry, but it's time to be an annoying feminist for a moment. Why not have the army be any gender, not just men? You have fantastical elements in your story, so don't try to it's historically inaccurate me. Is it easier to believe that there are monsters than women in military? I'm going to spoil a bit of the first episode in order to show my problem with the storytelling here. The main character basically doesn't talk the whole episode in order to later reveal that she's a woman. Is she hiding that she's a woman? That was my first thought, since she's the only woman in the troupe. But when she's revealed to be a woman, the other characters in the story have no reaction to it. So either they already knew, or they didn't find it weird enough to care. In either case, that shows that this reveal was solely for the audience, not for the characters. It's like not diegetic somehow. In the next episode, she talks normally. Admittedly not a lot, but not zero. I did try the second episode, and I couldn't seem to bring myself to care about anything happening. The transition between the two episodes seemed really clunky. I thought I'd missed something for a moment there, and I instantly lost the thread of which country is which and who is where, and our main character, at least as far as I had watched, seems to have nothing to do with the revolutionary plotlines. It just did not click with me. Hyoken no Majutsushi ga Sekai o Suberu. This show starts off strong. Our main character is in some kind of military unit and witnesses a death, which is surprisingly emotional since it was in the cold open and we don't really know anyone yet. The show also has a good level of production overall, which kept me going through the episode. And honestly, if you can get me through the first episode of a magical school show without me using my speed up button, that's a mark of quality. Unfortunately, the school stuff is by the numbers. Our main character isn't a noble, so he shouldn't even be at this school. Some guys try to ineffectively bully him. The main girl comes over to stop them. She's, of course, from one of the most important noble families, Tum-to-Tum. This show has put some effort into its English setting, the characters having normalish English names, which makes it funnier when they use ordinary as the term for non-nobles, like as a noun. He's an ordinary! So close and yet so far there, guys. Basically, for everything I liked, the cold open, the main character dorkily exploding chalk in his own face, the unintentional humor behind calling people ordinaries. There was something trite or some other element of bad storytelling on the horizon that would pop up. The most egregious example, we get some exposition about the 7 grand sorcerers. They depict this visually by showing us silhouettes of the 7. In the silhouettes, the men are all in full body obscuring cloaks, and the women have their outfits shown off, including one of them who's wearing crazy anime lingerie outfit. Then it's revealed that 2 of the 7 work at this school, but the other 5 are mysteries. Like, no one even knows where they are. How do you even know there are 7 if you don't know who they are? And if they're so mega special, why are any of them working at this particular school? If there are 5 of them are a mystery, why did you show us the 3rd girl in the group photo? The show's biggest advantage is that it has a quick pace, so it's not boring, but it also feels kind of like we got 3 episodes worth of plot in one, and when the ending rolled around and the ED showed all the girls in their underwear, like, fuck you. Actually, this show is pretty unlucky. If it came out in a slower season, I may have watched it to laugh at it, but we have the king of so bad it's good magical school shows back for a 2nd season, and Ayakashi Triangle, so I don't even have space in the docket for a hate watch. Tomo-chan wa onanoko. In university, I took every sex and gender course available at my school. I guess it was some kind of attempt as a cis asexual to understand everyone else. I don't know. But I love things that play with gender or sexuality. And I'm well fed this season as the concept of gender bending has made a triumphant return in anime. And of course, I was thrilled to see a show that reveals how fucking gay boys in Japan and Korea act with each other without knowing it. Tomo and Jun have been friends since childhood, but since Tomo is a pretty huge tomboy, Jun treats her more like one of his other guy buddies than a girl. She has a huge crush on him. He doesn't want their relationship to change, and as a high school boy, has decided the best way to go about this is by pretending he literally doesn't know she's a girl. At first I was really into this. It sheds light on some stupid gender differences, and it has multiple characters of different genders. Tomo's best friend reminds me of the psychic girl from Fruits Basket, which is always a good thing. Then I started getting really bored by the overuse of Tomo beats Jun up for everything as a joke, and they introduced a foreigner character who is just the most egregiously annoying character I've seen recently. She talks like a baby, she has no common sense, and she just displays really, really bizarre behavior, and I could not imagine watching another episode with her in it. To be fair, the show wasn't, amazing beforehand, unless girl hits boy over misunderstanding is precisely your type of comedy, but I probably would have kept watching it as a dinner show if not for Blondie. Kubo-san o mob o yurusanai. Remember when I complained about the male leads in rom-coms being bland and uninteresting? Someone decided that was a good plot line for a show. Our masculine main character is a mob, a background character. He stands out so little that he has had to come up with strategies to make sure the teacher notices him so he doesn't get marked absent. He's basically a cryptid to his classmates. Except for our main girl, who is, of course, beautiful, gets good grades, and is good at sports, too. This is a description that comes up so often in these high school rom-coms that it's, making me break out in hives. It's like a show saying, hi, I can't think of anything to make this character interesting, so they're just perfect. It also means the main girl is there just for, wish fulfillment, and despite being beautiful, popular, smart, athletic, she is not only the only one who notices Kubo, but she seems really into him. Because we wouldn't have a plot otherwise. The main character's mom was adorable. More chubby anime moms, please. Again, in a slower season, this could have been one of my dinner shows because it's actually very well done, and some of the jokes landed. But the premise is just so bland that, honestly, it would need to be exceptional to hold my attention instead of just pretty good. Saikyo Omyoji no Isekai Tensei Ki. Geboku no yokai domo ni kurabete monster ga yowasugiru da ga. In many ways, this is a standard isekai. The twist here being something refreshing, though. Japanese culture. Our main character was a powerful omyoji in Japan and was betrayed. In his last moments, he used his powers to be reincarnated into a new world. In the fantasy world, our main character discovers he doesn't have magic in the way that it's recognized in this world, but he maintains his omyoji skills and uses them to get around it. I don't know a lot about onmyoji, and most of what I know from Sailor Mars. Onmyoji are a sort of psychic spiritual medium or exorcist. You probably recognize the kind of paper charms and things they use from various shows. This guy also has a lot of traditional Japanese spirits bound to him. I really enjoyed this show at first, and then... Don't make me go! Despite not having magic, and having proven himself to be fully capable and maybe stronger than the mages in this world, he all but begs to be allowed to enroll in magic school. And this is despite him saying constantly that his goal is not to stand out, because he thinks that's what got him killed in his first life. Where's the logic? I don't want to stand out, so let's go to a place where I will stand out aggressively. He also brings his maid with him. She has as little personality as he does, with the side note that she wants to fuck him. Like, she was disappointed when she asked to share a bed with him and he said no. I liked the first episode, but the second made me so mad and really had some terrible writing. At school, he asks the examiner about the first test. The only thing the examiner tells him is, it will glow white if you have aptitude for all 4 elements, which I've never seen. If it's so rare you've never seen it, why is it the one feature you tell him about? Well, of course, it's because someone's going to make it glow white, and we needed to be told that was special. Having a Japanese onmyoji using their style of powers in a different world, great. Immediately taking it to some bland, harem-y magic school shit, with no idea how to do exposition well, not so good. Isekai Nonbiri no Oka. This is an isekai where our main character gets a chance to live a new life. Although, side note, hey 39-year-old Japanese man who got a terminal illness, your life sucked so bad, I'm giving you a do-over. That god better be giving out a lot of do-overs if that's the bar for shittiness. Anyways, our main character decides to be a farmer, and is given a magic all-purpose farming tool. The storytelling is... They do the open in medias res and go back to square one thing, which I think is super weak. The animation certainly exists. It's not unwatchable by any means. We're properly into the part of the list of shows I could definitely watch more of, but there's nothing really to grab me. It's kind of like watching your friend play Stardew, except now it's hetero harem shit. Spy Kyoshitsu. Weirdly, this show with Classroom in the title is one of the least school-based shows on my list. After a horrific war, 2 countries have put outwardly obvious hostilities aside, but all is not peaceful. Instead, there's a vicious spy war happening behind the scenes. But this time it's not Spy Family. The country of our main characters sent most of their legendary team of super spies on a critically important mission, and none of them returned. The last remaining member, who was not present on that disastrous mission, is possibly the best spy alive, and now he needs to complete the mission without all his previous allies. To help him out, he recruits a bunch of dropouts from all the best spy schools. It's anime, I don't know why, okay? I thought this was going to be an assassination classroom type show, all the girls banding together to learn to spy by trying to defeat their teacher. But no, the show races along, and by like the 3rd episode, we're already doing the mission. I was initially pretty interested. I mean, a bunch of girls working together to become awesome spies? We're never actually in a traditional classroom despite the title. I was a little skeeved out since it felt like the show was suggesting a future romance between the teacher and the main girl. And then the 3rd episode came out and like, oh no. Welcome to ass-pulley plot twist after plot twist. Like, final season of Sherlock shit. Wildly convoluted. Secret characters. I would only watch more in order to laugh at it. And again, my docket for shows to laugh at is actually pretty full this season. Hikari no. I really do need to make an uncultured swine sign for me. This is another, like, this shit is too good for Orestria type show. This is an almost fairy tale-esque story taking place in a world where fire itself has turned against humanity. Fire is crucial for life in ways that we sometimes take for granted. And in this world, if a human even gets too close to a flame or an ember, they will combust to death. Yikes. Humans have found a special kind of liquid fire that comes from monsters, and there are special hunters who acquire it. Obviously, this is a dangerous and critical profession, as this liquid fire is the only way people can really heat things or cook. So when our main character wanders into the woods and one of these hunters dies protecting her, it's a big fucking problem. She's also left with his specially trained hunting dog, and it will attack anyone other than her that tries to get too close to it. As such, she's sent off on a voyage to the capital to repent by returning the dog. There's so much cool world building here. The animation is lovely. The fairy tale vibe is unique. The designs have a real emotion to them. But it's also slow and delicate and couldn't quite keep my attention. If this kind of stuff is more up your alley, it seems promising though. Mononogatari. Our story takes place in modern-day Japan. Unbeknownst to most people, spirits sometimes come from the other plane and find an anchor in our world through objects. There are also people who are exorcists. Typically, these spirits are just lost and get willingly sent back to the other side. Some of them grow attached to our world and are allowed to stay under certain conditions. Some of them get violent and have to be defeated and destroyed. Our main character lost some loved ones to one such attack and is overly aggressive towards the spirits, beating up even peaceful ones to send them back, and he's about to lose his license to exorcism, so to speak. To force him to give these spirits more of a chance, he's basically sent to live with a bunch of them. There's some real creativity to these designs, the way they transform the objects into their fighting styles, which makes the fights fun, but good gads, the general pacing is pretty slow, and it's kind of predictable. I also personally don't vibe with the main character. The only reason I'm not watching it is just that there's too many other shows I was more interested in. I wouldn't really say it has any big problems. Nokemono Tachi no Yoru. One of our main characters is a powerful demon with eternal life who's bored out of his skull. Most demons are going around making contracts with humans in order to extend their lifespan, but he has no need of that, so he's basically not interested in anything. Until he finds an orphan girl being abused by a terrible priest. She can see him in his demon form, which most humans can't. For reasons he doesn't even understand, he starts coming by to visit her and tell her stories. Eventually, they start going on a grand adventure together, basically just sightseeing and occasionally interacting with spiritual demonic happenings around them along the way. And the feminine urge to relate to characters with hair powers. I've always loved people with hair powers, and I'm kind of stoked to have it be a masculine character doing it for once. It's not enough to keep me watching a show, though, and I felt that the relationship between these main characters and the relationship between the main characters in a different show later on this list were similar enough that I didn't really need to watch both, and this show was the loser in that comparison. The first two episodes here are basically set up, and then the third is the first more episodic one, and I had the feeling that it was just going to continue being kind of episodic little vignette stories. Revenger. We're in historical samurai times, right near the end as Japan is getting overtaken by foreign influences and opium. Wealthy elites are taking advantage of people all over the place, and the church is here with a group of secret assassins willing to get vengeance for these poor, unfortunate souls. Their underground church? Fucking gorgeous. Right out of a Nier game. The assassins? They have cool abilities leading to interesting and fun action setups. I do find myself wondering why they help people when their lives are over instead of, saving them beforehand. And then I started to notice that there's no fucking female characters in the show. Women here only exist to be poor and wretched, deceived and abandoned. And even then they can't take vengeance for themselves, because none of the assassins are women either. There's a lot of potential here, but there's no fucking reason they couldn't have a single one of their assassin team be a woman, and I'm over it. It's 2023, women exist. Hi! So, you're gonna notice that footage of me in different outfits is mixed together. I make these videos in two halves, recording all the stuff I dropped early in the season first, and usually the shows I keep watching end up higher on the list. But this time they got kind of mixed up. Basically, if I'm in the first outfit, then it's a show I dropped early, and if I'm in this outfit, then I watched a good chunk of it before dropping, if that makes sense. Tensei Ojo to Tensai Reijo no Maho Kakume. This is not the first show I've run into with the notion that all nobles can use magic, which is definitely an uncomfortable trope. Let's not justify the nobility. Mind you, here the point is that our main character can't, but that's just the demoniac way of introducing a rule by its exception. This is a blink and you'll miss it isekai. Our main character is the crown princess, and quite annoyed to have been isekai'd without magic. But she's intrepid and came up with a solution. Just fucking invent Magitech. And I stan a girl who's like, if I'm making a flying Magitech device, it's absolutely going to be a broom. So, I don't know if you know, but there are all these memes about lesbians not knowing if they're flirting or not, and that's this show. That is the main plot of this show, and the main focus of each episode. There's courtly stuff, there are fights, but mostly it's just longing glances. From what I can tell, the source material is Yuri, but they seem to have watered it down for broadcast. None of the parts of this show are bad, but they're just not meshing together into an enjoyable whole, and I got bored. Koori zokusei danshi to cool na doryu joshi. Turns out I will watch a lot of your show, possibly more than I should, just as long as it's a romance about adults. I'll also watch a lot more of a mid-show if it makes a good dinner show. A dinner show being something I feel isn't going to pull any crazy shit, something I don't have to pay a ton of attention to get enjoyment. I can watch it while eating dinner. This show is about some people working in a Japanese office. It's mostly in our normal world, except there are some people who are descendants of various yokai and thus have special powers. Our main couple are a human woman who... She's another reason I watched more of this than I should. Fuyutsuki's a lot more reserved than many other characters, but also sincere, and the way she Googles everything is very relatable. Her romantic interest is a descendant of a Yukiona, and as such his emotions are displayed through various frigid weather phenomena. Our meet-cute is her finding him frozen solid out of nerves from starting a new job. One thing I really appreciate about Himuro was the focus on his emotions. There's so much toxic masculinity in media, it's really nice to see some earnest masculinity instead. The show is more from Himuro's point of view than Fuyutsuki's, which was not the impression I got from the first episode. However, my first impression tweet about the show seems to have been prophetic. I was worried about the gimmick running pretty thin, and that is exactly what happened. The show just doesn't have enough in either the comedy or romance departments to carry itself. The animation and direction are all basic with a capital B. Even as a casual show to enjoy while eating, I found myself apathetic towards watching more episodes. I really liked it at first, but it just fell into that trap of there being no progress in the relationship whatsoever. And then it moved on to focusing on the romances between side characters, but those romances also had no progress. My next complaint is more of a nitpick, but as the show was failing to capture my attention, I started to overthink it. If you take the show too literally, it really starts to fail. Either people like Himuro are common enough that his snowstorms shouldn't be a surprise, or his abilities should be rare enough that he can have a job that makes use of his superpower instead of a generic office job. Well, at least we've learned that I have a thing for guys who display their emotions through localized weather events. I'm sure that's not unattainable for me. Rogo ni sonaete isekai de hachimanmai no kinka o tamemasu. Oh good, another show that I absolutely loved at the beginning, which made it harder for me to recognize that I was no longer really enjoying it. I thought I had too many dinner shows this season, and then they started dropping like flies. Just like the previous show, this show has very mid-animation and direction as well. Our main character, an orphaned young woman trying to figure out how she's going to live her life after the loss of her family, gets isekai'd. Typically, it's reincarnation or sometimes a summoning, but here we discover it's actually teleportation. And as soon as she realized that she has teleportation powers, I realized I adored her because she saw dollar signs. Immediately figuring out that she can use modern items as hot commodities in the new world to get gold, which she can then sell back in our world for money, she has a plan. She has some capital due to her inheritances, and she sets a realistic goal: She wants enough money to retire in either world. She's concerned maybe she could lose the ability to teleport at some point, so she wants to make sure that if she were to get stuck, no matter which way, she'd be okay. I also really enjoyed her dead, dorky brother popping up with advice. It was really cute and showed how she looked up to him. This is not the first show, and unfortunately not the last show, where I'm interested in the businessy premise of the show, and then that's not the direction the show really goes. Like, she goes through a lot of work to get a store, and then as soon as she gets the store, the show decides to not really hang out there and focus on that. I wish I liked this more, especially since I get Arrow Ace vibes from the main character. Eiu o bu o kiwameru tame tensei su, soshite sekai saikyo no minari kishi, female symbol. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce the female sign, but it's there in the title. Continuing my loved this show at first, then lost interest era, we have one of this season's many gender-bending shows. Our main character was a great heroic king, like King Arthur level, basically rescued and set up a whole country. His only regret, on his deathbed, was that his kingly duties had taken him away from the pursuit of martial power, which was his passion. His goddess grants him his wish in the form of a new life, where he will maintain his knowledge and be able to see how strong he can become without having quite so many responsibilities to hold him down. However, since he didn't specify anything more than that, his new body happens to be a female one. You'll notice me use he, him pronouns for the character, and as far as I had watched the show, he consistently mentions identifying as a guy, which was his reality in his first life. The show has some explorations of this gender bending, in particular him feeling like an ass for having ever stared at a hot girl, as he now feels deeply uncomfortable when he finds himself being stared at. But I would have preferred it to delve into that more. I kept getting weird vibes from this show. Like, I'm concerned that the author just didn't want to look at dudes, so they gave the main character a female body, but a male mind. Like, maybe they thought such a battle-hungry woman would be unbelievable, even though I've definitely watched shows with characters like that. This could absolutely be me misreading things, it's just the vibe I keep getting, but I think I'm right. Especially with the boob mascot. They have a mascot with a feminine shape who prefers hiding in girls' cleavage, and the show loves focusing in on the jiggling cleavage as the mascot enters or exits their hiding spot. Basically, this isekai power fantasy featuring a group of girls feels like the goal was for male gaze, not to represent girls. And you know what? That still isn't that much of a problem. I like watching hot girls doing badass things. But then they went to a magical school like 5 episodes in. They're in this no man's land world of too much plot happening to be a good, relaxing show, too overpowered for anything to feel like a threat, and not enough plot meat to carry the show. Ars no Kyoju. This show takes place in a world where there are many different groups of humanoids, and while they're relatively friendly to each other, they tend to live separately, in part because of a need to be prepared for Kyoju attacks. Big ol' honkin' monsters that show up. The best weapon against them are clerics, women with huge power, but they can't wield it themselves, so they grant their power to a paladin, who is male, of course. Us silly women just need a guy to support us. While I find that plot point super frustrating, I'm not going to harp on it too much. See, I'll eat my hat if this isn't from the same people who made Pirate Princess Fina. It has the same art style, the same level of quality, so there are still lots of varied and interesting female characters. At one point, there's this tribe of big burly men with little tiny women, and they're like, that's why the men need to protect the women. And my eyes were rolling, and then the big burly man was perfectly open to the idea of Jiro being interested in guys. So I was like, alright, I'm less annoyed if they're okay with same-sex stuff. Ours has creative world building, and there's no, 2-minute exposition dump that explains about the different tribes of people. You just learn about it naturally as you meet them. So the storytelling is good. But it suffers from some Monster of the Week vibes. It feels like someone thought we'd be bored if there wasn't a monster attack every week. Ultimately, I think I liked Fina Pirate Princess more. That show had more of a narrative push since it was a race to a place. Here they're running away, but every week the bad guys are there to attack them with a Kyoju anyway, so it just feels like it's spinning its wheels. But I'm going to keep being excited when these people make a show. I think one of these days they're gonna hit it out of the park. Trigun Stampede. Trigun takes place on a desert planet, giving full cowboy and tumbleweed vibes. Human settlements depend on plants, a sort of mysterious futuristic technology that allows for electricity and the production of clean water. Rolling in out of the wasteland is a wanderer, a man with wild blonde hair and a big red coat. Vash the Stampede, the humanoid typhoon, the outlaw with the $60 billion double-dollar bounty on his head, the man who makes you immediately wonder, this buffoon? This goofball. He's the infamous destroyer of entire cities? Trigun is anime royalty. This is one of the big-name shows from my youth, and one of my favorites as well. It lulls you in with warmth and comedy, and then it starts dropping bombs, all presented with great music, great animation, and a sense of style. Trigun Stampede is a retelling and reimagining of the story. The setting is the same, and the concept behind Vash is the same, but the way they're telling the story is wildly different, especially tonally. There are quite a few changes in the plot, and especially the characters. The thing about Stampede is, if you watch this before you watch the old school Trigun, you are never going to get Trigun's intended effect. Maybe you wouldn't anyways. Maybe you've been spoiled about the plot. Maybe old school Trigun, it starts kind of slow, and maybe you just won't get into it. It's just something to keep in mind that literally watching any Trigun Stampede is spoilers for Trigun. One thing Stampede does very well is 3D animation. This is the best 3D animated anime I have seen. I don't love the Vash redesign, except for his hair, which is definitely an improvement. But the 3D itself works very well, and especially in the action scenes. I really genuinely dedicated myself to watching this show, watching more of it than I wanted to, because I didn't want to just be a hater. It was obvious from the cold open that this show was just going for a different thing and a different tone, and I let myself accept that. I think it's good 3D. I would still rather it be 2D. But, it did it well, so I was like, okay. But in the end, I don't need this. The old show had a lot of goofiness, which is largely absent here, and that kind of thing is going to be to taste for sure. I bet there are a lot of people who will like this better. It's more modern, it's more slick, it's speedier. It's possible if I didn't love the old Trigun, or if this wasn't called Trigun, that I would like it more. But as it is, it's impossible for me to watch it without making comparisons, and I just can't get past the feeling that I'd rather just rewatch Trigun. High card. This is probably the best first episode of the season. Unfortunately, it didn't keep up that energy for me. The plot is based around a very, very special deck of cards. Each card has a power. One of the cards we see in the first episode is one that turns things the wielder touches into marbles. And things here includes people's body parts. Our main character is an orphan pickpocket who has a card and doesn't even really know the power of it. He accidentally gets involved with some card gangsters and card good guys, and ends up joining the good guys. Emphasis on guys, because from what I saw, there was like a 10-to-1 male to female character ratio, and even the girl on the main team had very little to do. I also thought they would take more advantage of having unique powers in the cards, like the ability to have Stone Ocean stand battle situations or something, but a lot of the cards are just too straightforward. Like our main character's card summons a gun. It doesn't have any super aiming powers or anything, just here's a loaded gun. And yeah, the higher card value, the more powerful the card, and Finn's card is a number 2, but it's still just not an exciting power. After the glorious first episode, it basically becomes totally episodic with our good guys trying to track down cards. So, this is hardcore Cardcaptor Sakura. Except that show has character development, many femme and mask characters, some LGBT representation, and a lot more heart and creativity in the battles. So, in conclusion, watch Cardcaptor. Tondemo skill de isekai horo meshi. A group of Japanese people get isekai'd via summoning. The king needing heroes. Our main character's skill is not a combat skill, and everyone mutually agrees that, yeah, nah, he's not going to join the hero party. Makoto's skill? He can use the fantasy world currency to order things from a Japanese online supermarket. He also has a large transdimensional storage space. He sets out to become a merchant, and yes, another show where I was excited for the business aspects, and that's not what it is at all. No, this is a cooking show. His cooking skills and literally out-of-this-world ingredients end up attracting a legendary lupine creature, Fenrir. Fenrir bullies him into a contract where Fenrir will become his familiar, in exchange for Makoto being Fenrir's chef every day. There goes his plan to keep a low profile. This is the ultimate dinner show, since at least half of the runtime of each episode is dedicated to cooking and eating food. This show is nicely animated in a kind of subtle way. You're not going to get amazing clips of Sakuga to send people, but it does everything it wants to do and uses a variety of different art styles for different segments. There are no stakes. Well, no dramatic stakes at least. Meat stakes, there are aplenty. There's never any danger thanks to Fenrir being OP as hell. It's also a very aromantic show. You don't have to deal with any romance or harem shit here. There are barely any human characters aside from the main character. In case you, like me, were wondering what he does with all the trash, well, without spoiling, I thought the show would just never address it, but they do, and the solution is excellent. Otonari no tenshi-sama ni itsu no mani ka dame ningen ni sarete ita ken. This is like everything I hate in a rom-com. High school romance, the boy is a standard plain main character dude, the girl is perfect, good at sports, good at school, good at housework and cooking, gorgeous. She's called Angel at school, the titular Tenshi-sama. And I watched this instead of High Card or Ars no Kyoju. If someone watched this and found it boring, I totally see that. If someone watched this and found it to be a really weird dynamic, fair. I've seen this denounced as a perfect little housewife fantasy. I accept and see all of these. Valid and understandable. But it just didn't hit me that way. That's all I can say. Art is subjective. For me, compared to most anime, I felt like the characters in this show were well-rounded characters. Like, Mahiro fits the trope of the perfect girl that I complained about earlier in this very video, but she's so shy she ends up being cold. She doesn't have any friends, just people who idolize her, which has her feeling alienated and alone. We even get background later to explain why she excels at everything, and it's not effortless. And while Amane looks like a standard main character guy, he has this sarcasm that makes him feel less like a blank slate. He treats Mahiru like a person, not like he scored a hot housewife. In fact, him treating her as a human instead of some untouchable angel is what attracted her to him. I love the side couple too, actually. Both how they relate to each other and how they relate to the main character. Like, that's it. That's the difference. They got me feeling these characters instead of just seeing them as tropes. It's almost an aromantic rom-com. Their chemistry is more about respecting boundaries, enjoying each other's company, and finding a way out of loneliness together than any, like, doki doki stuff. Mao gakuen no futeki gosha, shisho saikyo no mao no shisho tensei shite, shison tachi no gakko e kayo. Season 2. You know those who would win Superman versus Goku arguments? The winner is Anos Voldigod. He defeats Superman, Goku, and Chuck Norris with the blink of an eye. His subordinates are each more powerful than a normal power fantasy show's lead character. This show was the inaugural winner of my coveted 10 out of 5 rating. This show is ridiculous, knows it, and that's the point. And this is season 2, so I've definitely talked about this show before. However, it, like many other shows in this season, are delayed, so I have not been able to complete the season yet. Instead of a review, I'm going to share a few quotes. True, the magic sword of destruction is capable of destroying me, along with all logic. Did you really think you could defeat me just because you'd sealed my magical power? Forgive me, I couldn't help blasting you away with my laugh. Just because you have twice the magical power, did you really think you could make up for the gap in our abilities? Itai no wa iya nanode, bogi o ryoku ni kyoku furai shitai to omoimasu. Season 2. also known as Max Defense. Good, I needed more dinner shows. This show is about a VR game with no trapped in the game mechanic. There are no stakes, nobody's gonna get hurt or die, they just might miss out on some good loot. And this is not a complaint. Not every show needs to change your life or challenge you. This is cute girls doing cute VR things, which is better than most cute girls shows because at least the slice of life stuff here is like exploring a new region of the map instead of going to school. Mabel was scared to be hurt, so she maxed out her defense. While this should leave her as a non-functional character unable to do any damage, she managed to become OP because of something the admins have since patched out. This OP nature allows her to keep overcoming ridiculous things, and it has totally snowballed into her becoming more and more powerful in delightfully stupid ways. In this season, Mabel continues her quest to become the cutest eldritch horror. There's some overarching plot. Her guild and the other top guilds, they compete in events and they search for rare loot, but there isn't even really any tension between them. They're all friends. This is calorie-free, fun, simple entertainment. It's not going to leave an impact. It's not going to occupy your mind. You can binge the whole thing in one day, on cold medicine, not really paying attention. Cool. Watch each episode week to week without worrying that it's going to be eating your brain in between episodes. Tsundere, Akuyaku, Reijo, Lizelate to, Jikyo no Endo-kun to, Kaisetsu no Kobayashi-san. Oh no. Oh no. The look on that guy's face. I'm sorry to all my friends who have been on his side of me ranting about something. Alright. Strap in for this plot explanation. Kobayashi and Endo are Japanese high schoolers in the broadcasting club. They do things like morning announcements or color commentary for sports events. Also, everyone else in the club can tell that they're totally into each other, even though there has been no progress. Kobayashi is obsessed with an otome game, and after ranting about it constantly to Endo, because he likes her, he agrees to do a playthrough with her. And, as a side note, they can do color commentary on what's happening as practice for the club. Except somehow, this time, when they start playing the game, some of the characters can hear them. So we actually spend most of the runtime of this show in the game world watching these characters, who are very much depicted as real people. Kobayashi and Endo decide to try to lead the characters to the best possible ending, in which no one dies. So I've never played an otome game. Based on anime, they literally all happen in a magical school, and the main guy is a prince, and the player character is always bullied by the main guy's fiancé. At least this is the third otome game-based shows I've watched that have had that plot. And actually, I've seen that plot in a show that wasn't an otome game show. Our prince's fiancé, Lizelotte, is Kobayashi's favorite character, and she dies in most of the storylines of the game. This is a very optimistic rom-com. The presentation, it gets it done. Be prepared for a lot of sparkles. This is high up the list because it's my list. And the meta rom-com really works for me, and I was squealing a lot. But I think if this kind of thing is not specifically up your alley, it's probably not very watchable. Sugar Apple Fairy Tale. After her mother passes away, Anne decides to pursue her and her mom's dream to become the Silver Sugar Master at the once-a-year Royal Candy Fair, judged by the king. The winner gets a royal medal and can certainly make a cushy living off their sugar artistry skills. She has a few obstacles in front of her. An annoying stalker boy from her hometown who can't seem to see her as an independent person. The fact that this is a super misogynistic world where many people think a woman can't be a sugar art master. And literal wolves and bandits on the path to Lewiston, where the competition is held. Luckily, she has enough money left over to hire a warrior slave fairy. I just can't get away from slavery in anime. Yeah, this is also a world with slavery, because what I haven't really let you in on with my description thus far is that this show is a hot tonal mess. It wants to be deep, and it wants to be sugary sweet. It wants to be dramatic, comedic, romantic. It's from a light novel series, so the season is 3 relatively distinct arcs, and pretty much in each arc you don't really get a sense of the stakes until you're like 70% of the way through. The world building is interesting and deeply weird. Why are there human-sized fairies and tiny little fairies? Fairies don't need to eat, but they like to eat sugar from sugar apples, and they don't even eat with their mouths, they eat with their hands. And, like, why do sugar artisans have so much power in this world? The sugar apple viscount, or whatever the fuck his title is just hanging out with nobility and royalty all the time. I spent the first 5 or 6 episodes of the show thinking, if the next episode doesn't grab me, I'm gonna quit. Before I just gave in and accepted that I was gonna watch the whole thing. And I'm also gonna watch the second season that has already been announced. This show is a terrible idea. It should not work at all, but it does an unfairly good job of bringing out the romantic squee in me. Despite finding the plot kind of trite, it's bringing out all the emotions that it's trying to, and it somehow made me root for them. I think this show hacked my brain. Ayakashi Triangle. Hey, look! There's an ecchi high up on my watch list! This show has been delayed twice. In fact, it seems they're just gonna re-air it as a July show, so I guess I'll have more info for you then. For now, it seems like a pretty normal plot. There's a guy and he's a ninja exorcist, so obviously we spend most of our time at high school. He's also in love with his childhood friend, and it seems that she's very, very into him as well. Yay! Ecchi where the involved parties are actually into it. That basic plot is bolstered with good animation, character designs, color choice, slick pacing, gags that work, great music, and boobs. It's still an ecchi. It does have a lot of, like, oh my god, just fucking talk to each other plot contrivances, but it's balanced out by the genuinely interesting dynamics between the main characters. And explaining any more would be spoilers. The censorship is also weirdly inconsistent about whether panties are acceptable or not, leading to at least one scene where it looks like someone has a cat hanging out of their skirt. I refuse to check the uncensored to see if there's actually a difference in these panty shots. The highlight of this show is that in the first episode, one of the Ayakashi turns our main character into a woman, so we get gender-bending fun, and the ecchi has a sapphic flavor to it. I was gonna do an Orestria to this, but I was running into too many copyright issues. I've probably blurred the F out of this footage here, too. I leave you instead with the highlights of my notes for the first episode. 1. That bra lasso was impressive, though. And 2. How fucking dare this show be funny and have character designs I like so much. How fucking dare. Oh my god, this isn't even the highest ranked ecchi on my list this season. I don't think that's a high schooler. Fuck! Stop making my comments for me! Why are you excited by that idea? Every time I make a comment about the show, the characters in the show are already making the comment! What am I supposed to do? Buddy daddies. When a property comes out that is different than most things on the market and it succeeds, the inevitable reaction is for the market to get flooded with ripoffs. Spy Family is the cause of buddy daddies, and you won't convince me otherwise. That said, ripoff? Who cares if you do a good job? If you do a good job copying a great thing, you're gonna make a good thing. Here we have 2 assassins who live together and take jobs together. They are partners. Buddies, if you will. One day on the job, a wrench in the form of a girl who's definitely too young to be wandering around on her own gets thrown in their way. She's trying to find her dad, who is, in fact, their assassination target. Some stuff happens, and they end up taking care of her because they don't know what else to do with her. The family dynamic felt a little forced at first, but I got into it as the show progressed. There are lots of small details and characterizations that I really enjoyed. The biggest fault of this show is that the characters keep encountering problems, and as an adult, I'm like, that's not really a problem, just do this. But it's funny enough to forgive. Especially to get to see dads and fatherhood shown in anime. And one could say that these men have not had normal lives and are just way less prepared for parenthood than a literal preschool teacher, which, fair. I know. You think I just like this because of the gay vibes, and let me tell you, I genuinely don't think they're gay. I think just about every character in Blue Lock is gay, but these guys? This is a queer platonic relationship, and it's really lovely to have that representation. Also, unlike Spy Family, which is probably going to run for just about forever, this show has concluded in one satisfying season. Nier Automata version 1.1a. I love the Nier Automata video game. Oh god, there's no way to please people with pronouncing that, is there? Because I love the game, I was really trepidatious going into this. And I almost didn't make it through the first episode. It was basically just the first chunk of the game with no variation. And while the animation was nice, the CG assets were rough. Like, possibly straight from the game. And I thought, if this is going to be literally the game but animated, then I don't need this. There's such a huge gulf in the emotional engagement between seeing something happen in a few minutes in a show versus the immersive loneliness of playing it through the game. Just as I was thinking of dropping the series, there was a post-credit puppet show, and I loved it. So I was like, let's give this another try. And as the series has gone on, we've gotten more content that is not directly from the game, and it's great. However, this series is not complete at time of recording, having been delayed a couple times, so I don't know how it will go. I do know that its best asset is having access to the music from the game, though. Oh my god. Generally speaking, I recommend the game over the show, but the show is not meaningless if you've played the game, and I'm not going to blame anyone for whom it's more convenient to watch, 5 hours of anime than play a game that I have sunk 100 hours into. Fumetsu no Anate. God, because this show always starts mid-season, I have talked about it 4 times already. Our main character, Fushi, is an immortal being that began life as a stone. Through encounters with living beings, they gain the ability to transform into things. The show deals heavily with the idea of memories. The people Fushi encounters will live forever through them unless those memories are stolen by our antagonists, the Knockers, which are basically plant monster things. In this season, Fushi starts to learn about the concepts of sexuality and gender, so that's right up my alley. The show's plot is original and philosophical, with a lot to say without being boring or plotting about it. I have it a bit lower in my recommended section because I find it a little too easy to put off watching next episodes. It makes me cry a lot, and sometimes I don't feel like being an emotional wreck. And finally, the recommended category. If you have limited anime watching time, these are the shows that I think are worth checking out. Oni-chan wa Oshimai. Our main character is an otaku hikikomori with a genius little sister who is basically a mad scientist. Without his permission, she tests a potion on him, and it not only transforms him into a girl, but a younger girl, as he now appears to be a middle schooler. There's a problem, though. This is an ecchi with middle schoolers. It's not wildly ecchi, but the ecchi that exists feels really inappropriate. There are entire episodes where you don't notice it at all. Multiple episodes where I genuinely don't know what the difference between the censored and uncensored would be. But then there's onsen episodes. I 90% love this, and 10% am grossed out by the idea that there are people coming to this for eroticness. The fact that there are uncensored episodes makes me want to claw my own skin off. But this show is so fucking funny and cute and sweet, and the art design and animation is gorgeous, and they talk about these real issues. They talk about periods and other women's issues that I don't want to spoil here, but things that I've never seen talked about in anime before, and it's glorious. This anime shows so much sisterhood. It would be an all-time favorite if it had resisted the weird ecchi stuff. And please know, I am judging you if you're watching the uncensored. Benria Saito-san, isekai ni iku. Saito is a handyman. Almost a Renaissance-level handyman, just good at everything. He gets isekai'd into a very Dungeons and Dragons feeling fantasy world, in which he finds a lot more appreciation for his skills than he had in Japan. He ends up in an adventuring party with a powerful, possibly senile wizard, a badass night girl, and a fairy healer. At first I thought this was a sketch comedy show, and I even had it in my dinner show docket, and I was wrong. The sketch format was used to introduce things, but as you progress you realize that all these loose threads really come together. This show is funny, and touching, and epic. It's very D&D in that way. Sometimes we're goofing off, and sometimes we're saving the world. The show does well by having a lot of feminine characters. I mean, our main party is half and half, and we see women in many different roles. There's also some casual LGBT stuff thrown in there from time to time. I like that Saito doesn't feel like the center of the universe, unlike most isekai protags. There are plenty of plot lines that don't really involve him. This show is telling a wide variety of interesting stories about a lot of different characters, showing the ways they intertwine, the way these lives ebb and flow into each other. Everyone gets a backstory. You get a backstory. You get a backstory. You get a backstory. And thanks to this, I genuinely have no idea what's happening next in this show, ever, which is exciting. This was a weird season for me. There were so many shows that I thought had potential and fell off. So many shows I was enjoying that kept getting delayed. But there was one show where I was eagerly anticipating the new episode each week. I believe the children say living rent-free in my mind. The best show of this season is from last season. Blue Lock. Fed up with never doing well at the World Cup, Japan puts their money into a ridiculous plan to produce a world-class striker. They take all the promising high school soccer players and lock them up in a facility, forcing them to compete in soccer-related challenges. If you fail a selection, not only are you kicked out of the program, but you're blacklisted from Japanese soccer. Losing here is the death of your soccer career. The second half of the first season was so much better than the first half, and I already liked the first half. But the first half was a little bit too much like actual soccer, and this was more tactical. Despite the characters not having super moves that they announce like a lot of older shonen, it's still wild anime action. It also has this cool aesthetic where they're blending shonen with horror elements. I gushed about this so much to my coworker that he could watch memes about it without context and know what was going on, so, sorry about that. Honestly, I worked hard to come up with some nominees for Best Girl this season. Not a lot of competition in my opinion. The first runner-up being Romana from Ars no Kyoju because, holy fuck. A wise, sassy, bunny woman healer who will destroy you at poker. Did she have anything really important to do in the amount of the show that I watched? No. But do I have an unhealthy thing for bunny people of all genders, and is she a hot bunny woman? Yeah. Raelza from Beneria. One of our main party members, Raelza is someone you just don't see it in media a lot. A female knight wearing appropriate armor. She also gets a lot of characterization as one of the main characters in a show that loves backstories. She's very feminine while also being strong and brave. But the winner of Best Girl is Anna the daycare lady from Buddy Daddies. Am I biased by being a preschool teacher? Quite possibly. Anna's just a genuinely kind lady. Utterly unflappable. And rolling with the punches is a very important skill for a preschool teacher. The Buddy Daddies bring so much weird family stuff to her, and she doesn't blink an eye. She also gives them very good parenting advice. Meanwhile, I have 3 different candidates for Best Boy, and I have been going back and forth on the winner. All 3 of these could win in any given season. Why do they have to be up against each other? Shal from Sugar Apple Fairy Tale. This would be a very different show if Shal had his way, because that man is ready to shank someone at any given time. He's such an asshole, and I love him. A lot of times in a romance story where the man is like a magical being, they like keep them really mysterious. And with Shal, they somehow got the mysterious vibe, despite the fact that you know full well what he's doing and why. I don't know if I would have finished watching the show if not for him. Bachida from Blue Lock. If you've been watching these videos long enough, you know that I love me a crazy guy. Blue Lock isn't actually a death game, so he doesn't do anything too psycho. Although his introduction to the show was sleeping through a tense moment and then kicking a guy in the face. You see, he's got a monster inside him, as he will frequently tell us. But the best boy for this season is Ray from Buddy Daddies. A couch potato gamer with no useful skills in the realms of cooking or cleaning, who is also basically a human weapon, an extremely lethal assassin. I love him with his hair down in slob mode. I love him with his hair up and shaved sides in business mode. I love him sleeping in the bathtub. Is it spoilers to reveal that an assassin maybe didn't have the best childhood? Nah, you inferred that, right? So a big part of this show is him learning how to build connections and open up emotionally. He has a bit more of a character arc in this season than the other two contenders, and I think that's what pushed it over the edge for me. Good. Now it's time for the trans non-binary highlight. Fushi, as I've mentioned before, began their life as a rock. They can change to the forms of anyone they've met who has passed away, and they regularly change from masculine, feminine forms without any concern or discomfort. Definitely not a character with a binary relation to gender, and this season of Fumetsu no Anata is where Fushi has begun to learn about gender, relationships, and romance. Oni-chan wa Oshimai? Okay, so this is not official. This is my reading of the show, and I'm a cis woman, so I may not know what I'm talking about here. I want to feel clear that I don't feel Mahiru is trans because they woke up in a different body. Matsuri from Ayakashi Triangle woke up in a female body. Inglis from Auo woke up in a female body. But those two are constantly reaffirming that they are men. Okay. Mahiru does also still go by Big Brother, so maybe I'm weakening my own argument here. But before the potion, he was a hikikomori who didn't take care of himself and spent all day playing games. And I mean literal hikikomori, full shut-in, does not leave the house. Mahiru, after taking the potion, starts taking care of herself, taking pride in her appearance, going outside, making friends, living a normal life. For a character to have their mental condition greatly improved by waking up in a different body, that feels like a trans narrative to me. I would say that's it for the 2023 winter anime season, except there are so many shows that are not finished. But I can't wait. Like, Ayakashi Triangle isn't going to be done until summer, so I had to draw a line and make this video with the information that I had at hand. As for the spring anime season, I have a spring preview video where I basically judged the shows based off their covers. And if you follow me on Twitter, I have a thread of my first episode reactions. Alright, see you next time. Bye-bye.